So, in this part of the session, this is the live chat we're doing with Louis. Louis is joining us from WestJet. Please, I think I need the other mic. Who stole the mic? The passengers. Louis, why don't you take a seat? And we can actually, can everyone hear us? At the back as well?
I talk loudly, so you should be able to hear me.
Thank you. Perfect. But otherwise, we got the mic too. So, Louis, just let us know. Thank you so much.
You can hear us, right?
I'm good. Yeah, you can hear us, right? The idea is to really discuss the future of passenger experience, and I could not think of a better person in the room than Louis, because WestJet is currently completely in transition, going from narrow bodies to wide bodies, and even changing your narrow body experience. And Louis, of course, has not just done this at WestJet, but also at Hawaiian. So maybe you can just share a bit of background on that.
In terms of what WestJet's doing, or my experience?
Yeah, your experience first, and then we talk about WestJet.
Yeah, so from an airline perspective, I started off at Air Canada, so I was there for 5 years, and my background is actually labor relations, and so I actually started off in national museums. So I don't know what the British equivalent would be, but the American equivalent is the Smithsonian, and then from there, I transitioned into the airline business, and it was very acrimonious at the time. I think in my first 5 years, it was probably the most exciting, because I went through a bankruptcy, I went through a merger. For those of you who remember SARS, that was also quite the mess. What other disaster hit us? I'm trying to think, but it was just 5 years of just constant, one crisis after another. Joined Hawaiian Airlines for 12 years, and I was the vice president of in-flight services, catering, and then I moved into airports. Went to WestJet as the VP of airports, and just recently now I'm the vice president of guest experience.
Okay, so now you've got the whole portfolio.
Right.
WestJet, of course, our table knows and got some context, is getting new 787s.
Right.
You got your new 737 MAX, and you're getting a new interior, not just for 787s, but also for the MAX.
Right, so we have, we're going through a new rebranding. So the rebranding will be effective, everybody will show it pretty much in October, but we've got the new livery that's out. And obviously when you're WestJet, the problem with our airline is really the name, WestJet. Doesn't really, for those of you who probably, I've talked to a few of you who weren't really familiar with WestJet, you have no idea where we're from. And so from the livery, you'll be able to have a pretty much more of an iconic or a view of who we are. We've got the maple leaf, and we're trying not to compare ourselves to Air Canada, so you don't want to have a maple leaf versus a maple leaf. Our new livery looks pretty distinctive. But we did something else, which other airlines have done, is we put Spirit of Canada on board. So you've got, Qantas has done this before, I think another airline as well. And so we really want to own the space that is that authenticity of being Canadian. For those of you, and I was talking earlier about our videos, how many of you have actually seen our videos, our WestJet videos?
I think everyone in the room, we have practitioners here.
Right. Our videos, we're pretty good at being they're tearjerker videos. I think we do a really good job in terms of how we communicate with people, and we have a kind of a natural genuineness about the airline and in terms of the brand. And now it's how do you translate that in terms of the new 787s and the service that we're going to have on board. One of the things that is new is we're going to have a business class. And so just to give you a bit of numbers in Canada, if you were to take the airline revenue in Canada, 44% of it is basically economy and leisure, and 56% is business. Air Canada pretty much owns 80% of the 56%. And so they have a big chunk of that. And so for us, our anchor will actually not necessarily be business class, but it's going to be premium economy, which you're seeing today in airlines, which is very successful. So we've seen all our airplanes now basically have premium economy. And our new 787s will have a big section of the premium economy. But we are venturing for the first time in the lie-flat business, which should be pretty exciting.
Just for context, while to the rest of the airlines in the room, it might seem business class. Yeah, what's the big deal? Everyone has business class and full flat beds. WestJet is very much akin to Southwest.
Yeah, I was saying JetBlue. So
now it's going towards
our lineage is with JetBlue actually, because we started off. I can't remember. Is it Neiman?
David Neeleman.
Yeah, I can't remember the story, but he couldn't work for an airline in the United States for a certain period of time. I think when he left Southwest, I believe that's the story. So he came up to Canada and helped and consulted on the startup of WestJet about 20 years ago. And then from there went back to the United States and started JetBlue.
Right.
And so when you do the both airlines, I typically, when people look at me and they say, you know, who is WestJet? I just say, well, think Canada and think JetBlue. And then people automatically registers. But going back to the comment, I had the camera on me, so I wanted to be a little careful. I didn't want it to register what I was going to say, but you know, we're really going after that 56%, which is that business class. Those business class guests. We just signed a joint venture with Delta Airlines. So when you look at our network, we have about 750 flights a day, mostly in North America and to the Caribbean, some into Europe. When you tack on Delta Airlines, that's going to give us an even more robust network for our business class travelers. And then when you add on, and we're also going to be doing a joint venture with Air France KLM, and then you add on the 787s that are coming, you know, we're going to be in a really good position to compete in that market, the marketplace.
Right.
Which I think is, you know, is the right way to go in terms of revenue, because you know, when you look at the United States on a different topic, what's interesting is that you've got a kind of a polarization of the revenue in the airline, where you've got the ultra low cost carriers and low cost carriers on one end, and it's almost, you know, there's no middle class anymore. You're either on one side or you're premium economy business, and so we have to be able to be flexible if we want to keep growing. Right. Yeah.
You're in a unique situation where the airline is in transition. You're thinking about the future of passenger experience and redesigning the cabin, rethinking the service delivery.
Yeah.
What are some of the questions you're trying to answer? Are you redoing the full customer journey map? Are you looking at the traveler with the mobile phone and that's it kind of thing? How are you doing this?
Probably one bite at a time, because it's pretty overwhelming, but I think you need to have a pretty clear view of where you want to go. And one of the things that we've said is we look at the guest journey, and it's really going to be digital. You know, we just spent some time. I was just down at Amazon in Seattle a few weeks ago, and we're working with them to see how we can digitize and be with the guest from beginning to end, so that we build that value. And what's fascinating is that, and it'd be interesting to get everybody's comments on this, but when it comes to digital, typically guests don't trust the airline. They'll trust a third-party app. They'll look at third-party apps. And it's the classic situation for those of you who are operational, where you'll come up to a gate agent. The gate agent won't know that a flight's been canceled or delayed, but they'll have a third-party app that's going to tell them that it's either there's been a gate change, there's been a cancellation, there's been a delay. And now you get into this kind of natural conflict with the guests, which is obviously very problematic. And so what's interesting about that is that, you know, I personally think that from a journey perspective, we are going to be competing with third parties. So the Googles of the world, there's somebody one day is going to own a platform that is going to take care of the guests. And the threat for the airlines is that we become a commodity. We could easily fall into that trap where we're a commodity, just like car rentals, just like hotels. And somebody is basically taking the guests and controlling them and building the trust and building the loyalty from the minute they book to the minute that their trip or they're back home or they've arrived at their destination. And that is very fascinating. So, you know, we have to, I mean, for me, one of the wake-up moments, I don't know if you saw it in Europe, but in the United States and in Canada, there's a Travelocity ad where the guest is in their hotel. No, they're at home. They wake up, and it's Travelocity basically waking them up and tracking them, getting into the taxi, you know, tracking them through the airport, getting onto their seat, out of their seat, onto the out of the airplane, and into their room in the hotel. And you don't see anything. You don't know what hotel, you don't know what airline, you don't know what taxi, you don't know anything. But Travelocity is the one who basically took care of them from end to end. And if we're not careful, we're going to fall into that trap where we'll be a commodity. So it's interesting. We have a new, to back up a little bit more, we have a new VP of digital who knows nothing about airlines. He basically spent 12 years at Facebook. He's been with other social media platforms as well.
Alfredo.
Facebook. He's a great guy. And so what's happened is I'm more of the traditional guest experience. You know, when you talk about, I'm the brick and mortar guest experience guy. You know, traditionally in airline, you've got the guy who's responsible for the guest experience, the guest journey. And then you've got digital that comes in, and you're sitting there going, okay, how are the two of us going to react together, and how are we going to work? And we're really connected at the hip He doesn't do anything without involving my team. I don't do anything without involving his team. And what we're doing is mapping out what this is going to look like as you go through the journey, so that you can prioritize you prioritize investments and systems that you're going to put in place for the guests. And I think typically what I've seen in the other airlines is that internally people compete against each other. So you'll have the operational guys who want certain apps, then you'll have the marketing guys who want certain apps, and then you'll have the marketing guys, the loyalty guys, and then there's really no kind of connection between the different services that you're offering as an airline, which doesn't work.
Yeah.
So one of the things we did, which was really cool, we took this was a hackathon, and we invited, name the social media platform, they were all there. Instagram, Facebook, Salesforce, Google, everybody was there, and it was very powerful. Imagine a hangar with, I don't know, it was probably about 150 people, and the solution that the challenge that we gave them was redesign the lounge experience. So we don't have lounges, and now we're getting into lounges. And so each team had to basically, in one day, in an 8-hour period, come up with solutions onto how you would have a completely redesigned lounge experience, which is different from what you have today. And it was fascinating. And I was one of the judges, and I sat there, and it's pretty powerful when you've got Salesforce, Google, Amazon, all these guys sitting there and pitching you a product, and how they're going to redesign the experience for you. It was a lot of fun. Salesforce ended up winning, which was fun. I went around and talked, I won't say who it was, but I went around and congratulated number 2 and number 3, and as an aside, they weren't very good sportsmen in the sense that they're very competitive people, so you can tell it's a very competitive industry, and they were very disappointed that they had not won.
You mentioned you went to Amazon and you've been working, how many of you have done a couple of years? 2, 3 airlines? Was there something that stuck out at you in terms of use cases for passenger experience that you'd not thought of when you went to Amazon or you did this hackathon?
So Amazon, the hackathon was interesting because what happens is you take non-airline people that come in that are extremely smart, who are, they don't have any barriers to making things happen. Whereas if you're in an airline, you have barriers to making things happen. And let's face it, we've got capital investment, we've got limited resources, we've got some of us have traditional structures. You've got people operating in silos, and the problem in airlines is that you've got the ops people that their role is basically efficiency, saving money and costs, and then you've got the marketing guys, which is more of the creativity. And you're trying to connect those two together. They don't actually fit. They don't always fit and compete with each other. Their environment is completely different, and so they react at a pace that's amazing. And so when we went to Amazon, the thing that I learned from Amazon, which was fun, is that they basically, and they have a methodology. It's just, I'm not going to do it justice, but it's kind of like McDonald's has a methodology for ideas, and they basically start with the guest and they work backwards. And and you've probably heard of this, but they basically start with a press release. So if we had an idea and we wanted to do something, the first thing that we would do at a table, we would write a press release of what that idea looks like, and from there, that press release identifies the experience, and from there you back it up.
Wow.
And
they don't release it though, right?
No. It's just for working. It's a working document.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's really cool. And that working document then becomes kind of the framework for how you take your guest experience and back it up so that it's functional and it will actually work and from a delivery perspective. And what we're looking to them specifically is to say, okay, how do you go back to this journey and say to somebody, Jane, your flight is in 2 hours. You need to leave now because traffic to the airport from your house is X. On the journey, it's Jane, you're not going to make your flight because of traffic or because of an accident. Do you want to rebook now? Or do you want to chance it? When you get to the destination, security lines, take this security check as opposed to this security check because of, you're taking the same platform as Waze as an example, and you can watch how people are moving through the security line in the airport to get to your gate. And so you basically accompany the guest and build that trust digitally with the guests, which I think is something that has a lot of potential.
I like that analogy of Waze for airport security.
Yeah.
I'll be on it any day. Waze for
It
airport security.
it would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so I think it's limitless in terms of what we can do with guests, but it's going back to what I said earlier, it's who's gonna own the guests is probably the thing that I'm the most worried about.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, somebody's gonna come up with some kind of program where they will try to get the guests from end to end, because at the end of the day, how do you create ancillary, the other big question is how do you create ancillary revenue through digital, right? Every airline sells rental cars, every airline sells, packages and things like that, but how do you take it up a notch through digital, through media, through a variety of different things? And, we haven't done it, we're exploring it. It's gonna be fascinating to see, what happens as the main product.
Right. If we focus only on the day of travel, okay, we look at just the day of travel from leaving the home to the airport to back pickup and everything in between, where do you think is the biggest change that's going to be coming on the day of travel in terms of passenger experience?
So the thing that I forgot to mention is we're talking about the guests and their journey, but there's a big void there, and the void is you can't create, and I'm a big advocate that you can't create a journey for employees and process. Because again, if you inform the guests and they're equipped with powerful tools, and you front line, you just created a disaster for yourself. Having said that, we're always going to have costs, are always going to be a problem, and you need to use the same technology to actually make your employees more productive, make your employees have more information, better information, so they can better serve the guests. So as an example for us internally, I also have responsibility for call centers, and in call centers we're going to look potentially at a tool from one of the companies that I mentioned where it amalgamates all of the information from the guests and all the different systems. So you have, if you're a call center agent today, you're dealing with at least 7 programs. If you're a specialist, you're dealing with 11 programs.
Wow.
So this will give you one platform to have everything.
So like a single profile of the customer.
Everything's going to be there. And so, and the other problem we're having now is that customers are shopping around where they're coming to us and they're coming through phone, through social, through letters, and we're not connected. And so you could have an instance of double dipping where you've got the social people doing atonement with the guests, while somebody on the traditional letter side, guest side, will do another atonement with the guests. This will create a kind of a unified, homogeneous approach with the guests where you're going to have it all together and you'll have that full profile, and from there you'll be able to manage them better. Now, having said that, what I think is important is that people will say, well, with the technology, you're becoming more productive. More productive means you're going to get less employees. You're not necessarily going to get less employees. You're just not going to grow with employees at the same rate as you did traditionally. But the employees that you are growing with, they, I believe, will be much more engaged because they'll have more information, and they will personally feel like they're doing a better job for the guests. And it's the same thing for the onboard, for the flight attendants and people in lounges. And again, we see the digital journey connected to the employees, that they have to go through their own journey, have their own tools to maintain engagement. Employees who are struggling to get information to be able to deal with guests. At the end of the day, whether you like it or not, it just kind of eats at them, and it just kind of, it upsets them. I could use a kind of more stronger word now that starts with P and O, but that's just how they feel about it. And so with these tools, I think the only way you get to high engagement is utilizing these tools. High engagement, then you get yourself in a virtuous cycle with these, with the guests and now with the employees. And I think those two things combined together is really powerful.
Yeah, I think it's a very important point, ensuring that the employees are part of this whole conversation as well, because we keep thinking of passenger experience as just a passenger thing. But I remember, I think it was about 3-4 years ago, where Virgin America had done a pilot with Salesforce using Chatter to develop chatting platform and real-time management platform for crew to keep abreast of.
I mean, if I had a choice, if I had $1 to spend and put it on the guest or put it on the employee from a digital perspective, I would probably, and I had to pick black and white, I would probably put on the employee side, because it, And that's probably where I would put it. On the cabin side, we've actually started rolling out some apps that give the employees more information about the guests that are boarding, and people want to know.
Yeah.
People want, they're happy, they're using it. I mean, we forget, I mean, just to change the subject a little bit, but for those of you who are in ops, ops is the most kind of, the way you communicate in ops, airlines are bipolar in terms of how they communicate with their employees, because the operational people get communication one way, it's very traditional, it's read and sign documents, it's lengthy, it's not user-friendly in terms of how you read it. And then on the other side, it's quick, it's fast, it's engaging information. And we have to transform how we communicate with employees to get them to, better deliver better service. And so when we do that through apps and through different media types, they love it. They just embrace it.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. I think this is a perfect segue to go into the roundtable discussions on the future of passenger experience, which will be, of course, led by Panasonic. But please join me in thanking Louis for the perspective. Thank you.